2:15 a.m., January 26, 2023. Engels 2 Air Base, Saratov Oblast, Russia. Senior Lieutenant Petrov stares at his radar screen with a mix of pride and relief as 4 perfect intercept kills appear at 30,000 feet. NATO cruise missiles vaporized in textbook geometry. The command center erupts with backslaps and relieved exhales. What Petrov doesn't know is that he just burned $8 million shooting plastic decoys. What he also doesn't know is that 50 Ukrainian drones have already spent 47 minutes flying toward his base at 260 feet, below the S-400's effective coverage, while his radar stayed locked on the wrong sky. In 90 seconds, 60 Kh-101 cruise missiles will cook off in a thermal event visible from orbit, erasing Russia's winter strike capability in one catastrophic chain reaction. And Petrov still thinks he's winning. If you want to see what $8 million in missiles actually killed, and why the real attack was already inside, stay with me and hit that like button right now. Because what happens next will absolutely shock you. The Tu-160M sitting on that hardstand represents everything Moscow wants the world to believe about Russian power. It's called the White Swan, a 200-ton strategic bomber capable of carrying 12 nuclear-tipped cruise missiles deep into NATO territory at Mach 2. Only 16 of these birds remain operational in Russia's entire fleet, each one a $250 million monument to Soviet-era engineering ambition. To the Kremlin, it's the crown jewel of the nuclear triad, the ultimate symbol of strategic reach. To Washington, it's a punchline that's been running since 2008. That year, Russia flew two Tu-160As all the way to Venezuela in what was supposed to be an intimidating show of force. The Pentagon didn't scramble interceptors. They didn't issue threats. They just tracked every mile with AWACS radar, measured every signature, and quietly cataloged exactly how loud and visible these stealth bombers actually were. It was geopolitical theater that backfired spectacularly, Moscow trying to flex, and the Americans taking notes on weaknesses instead of taking the bait. But Ukraine isn't laughing. 48 hours ago, they deliberately ambushed the Russian convoy transporting this specific Tu-160M to Engels 2. The strike was surgical, enough damage to force an emergency landing, not enough to destroy the aircraft outright. Now, because Russian logistics are held together with corruption and incompetence, the specialized hangar isn't ready. The most expensive aircraft in the Kremlin's arsenal is sitting exposed on the north hardstand, undergoing repairs under floodlights like a broken-down truck at a roadside garage. Colonel Volkov, the base commander, isn't worried. 4 S-400 battalions with 250-kilometer range, 8 Panzer systems covering every gap. 17 years defending this base without a single successful penetration. The math, he believes, is impossible to defeat. What Volkov doesn't understand is that Ukraine just turned that math into a weapon. All of it is about to become the largest single-point failure in modern Russian military history, and the attack is already inside his perimeter. 2 a.m. In a bunker outside Kiev, Ukrainian military intelligence watched 6 infrared feeds from recon quadcopters ghosting through fog 620 miles away. Russian guards ran predictable patrol patterns around a bomber they believed was untouchable. The mission brief was 2 words that sounded insane: strategic theft. The assets were almost embarrassingly cheap. 6 recon drones at $5,000 each, 50 Beaver attack drones at $2,000 a pop, 10 electronic decoys at $5,000. Total investment under $200,000. The real target wasn't the $270 million bomber, it was the arrogance protecting it. Kiev had war-gamed this obsessively for weeks, studying one fatal assumption embedded in Russian doctrine: threats come from above. The S-400 was a masterpiece designed to kill Mach 2 cruise missiles at high altitude, but it was effectively blind to anything flying at 260 feet, using river terrain as camouflage. The gap between high-altitude coverage and close-in defense was supposed to be seamless. On paper, the doctrine was flawless. In reality, it was a seam waiting to be ripped open. At that exact moment, Senior Lieutenant Petrov was logging atmospheric interference on his S-400 display, dismissing Volga River ground clutter as routine weather noise. The Panzer crews were drinking their 3rd round of tea. Ground security was checking corners they'd checked 1,000 times before. Nobody was particularly concerned. This was Engels 2, 600 kilometers deep into Russian territory, protected by air defense systems that cost more than Ukraine's entire annual military budget. None of them understood was that routine had just become a weapon. While Petrov logged another quiet night in his incident report, 50 Ukrainian Beavers were already 43 minutes into Russian airspace, flying so low his billion-dollar radar painted them as migrating birds, if it painted them at all. 400 yards from the Tu-160M, 4 Ukrainian operatives watched through night vision as Russian forces defended against threats that weren't coming while completely ignoring the attack already inside their perimeter. 2:15 a.m. Petrov's radar screen exploded with 10 high-altitude contacts carrying storm shadow signatures. 17 years of training compressed into one reflex. His hand slammed the launch authorization before his conscious mind could question the data. 448 N-6E interceptors roared skyward, their $8 million combined cost justified by contacts that looked exactly like the NATO threats he'd drilled against for nearly 2 decades. When the geometry converged perfectly at 30,000 feet and the targets vanished in brilliant flashes, the command center erupted in genuine relief because every man there believed they'd just executed flawless doctrine under real combat conditions. They'd actually incinerated $50,000 worth of plastic quadcopters, while the real attack was already screaming past their radar's blind spot at 260 feet. The decoy explosions dumped massive electronic noise across every frequency, turning the Panzer systems into sensor nightmares. Kuznetsov watched his fire control computer reject target lock after target lock as phantom contacts merged with Volga River clutter in patterns the system interpreted as environmental interference rather than coordinated threats. Meanwhile, the decoys had been programmed to mimic high-altitude dive patterns, which triggered the one response Russian doctrine had drilled into every operator's muscle memory: elevate barrels, protect against overhead strikes. Every Panzer crew followed their training perfectly, leaving low-altitude approach vectors completely undefended, because the doctrine assumed threats would never exploit the seam between high and low coverage. 400 yards from the Tu-160M, Ukrainian operators saw their 30-second window materialize as Russian guards tilted their faces toward the fireworks, and the bomber sat momentarily alone under the floodlights. Then the perimeter alarm, running on frequencies the electronic warfare package hadn't anticipated, shrieked across the base, and 3 Tiger vehicles began their sprint toward the hardstand. The operatives dissolved into fog without hesitation, the team lead transmitting one final command as they withdrew: execute Plan B. While Volkov's quick reaction force converged on the bomber to defend Russia's symbol of strategic power, 40 autonomous drones were already diving toward the eastern sector where 60 Kh-101 cruise missiles represented the actual threat to Ukrainian survival through winter. Doctrine had done exactly what Ukraine predicted, made the defenders protect pride over capability. 2:20 a.m. The Panzer crews did what they were trained to do. They opened fire with everything they had. Dual 30mm cannons cycling at 5,000 rounds per minute, tracers painting the sky in neon green arcs that would have looked beautiful if they weren't the visual signature of absolute panic. The sound was ungodly, sustained automatic fire so intense the gun barrels started glowing in infrared. And they were good. 18 Ukrainian Beavers died in orange fireballs, one of them clipped so perfectly it spun like a frisbee before cartwheeling across 300 yards of concrete. The Russian gunners probably felt like they were winning, watching their kill counter climb, not understanding that every drone they vaporized was teaching the survivors how not to die. See, this is where swarm logic stops being theoretical and becomes absolutely terrifying. Each destroyed beaver transmitted its final microsecond of data before impact, the exact angle of the tracer that killed it, the wind speed at altitude, the precise timing of the Panzer's reload cycle. The remaining 32 drones weren't just dodging, they were learning, adjusting their flight paths in real time based on how their siblings died, executing micro-corrections that an AI calculated faster than human synapses could fire. The Panzer crews were spraying and praying. The drones were solving differential equations. When the swarm suddenly split formation and banked hard east, the Russian gunners kept shooting at empty sky for almost 3 full seconds before their brains caught up to what their eyes were seeing. 22 drones hit the KH-101 stockpile's reinforced doors in near-perfect synchronization. The JP-10 jet fuel inside ignited at temperatures that made the air itself seem to scream. 5,200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough that titanium doesn't just melt, it vaporizes. 60 cruise missiles, each one worth $3 million and capable of hitting Ukrainian power infrastructure from 2,500 kilometers away, started cooking off in a chain reaction that turned $180 million worth of precision weapons into abstract metal sculptures. The shockwave cracked windows in Volkov's command center. Through the fractured glass, he watched the eastern sector transform into something that looked like a miniature sun had been born on Russian soil. Every missile in that stockpile represented 3 strikes against Ukrainian cities. Every detonation was Russian winter strategy evaporating in real time. But 10 drones were still airborne, and they just pulled the kind of high G-turn that should have torn their composite airframes apart. They weren't heading back to Ukraine. They were diving straight down the throats of the 2 160M's 4 NK-32 engines like wasps that had found the nest. A lone Russian guard on a fuel truck started firing his PKM in pure desperation, which is exactly like he is trying to stop a swarm of hornets with a garden hose. One beaver caught a lucky round, tumbled burning across concrete, came to rest inches from the bomber's landing gear. And now, the other 9 found their targets. The lead drone's shaped charge didn't just explode. It did something way more surgical and way more brutal. The Monroe effect turns explosive force into a jet of molten copper traveling at 7,000 meters per second. Think of it like this. Take a power washer, replace the water with liquid metal heated to the temperature of the sun's surface, then fire it directly into a Rolex. That's basically what happened to engine number 3. The copper jet screamed through the titanium compressor blades while they were still spinning from the earlier repair test, which meant instead of just punching a hole, it triggered what engineers call a blade-out event. The precision-machined turbine blades didn't crack or bend. They exploded into shrapnel that shredded the engine casing from the inside like dropping ball bearings into a running blender. Then drones 2, 3, and 4 hit the remaining engines in sequence. The 2160M didn't give anyone the Hollywood fireball they might have expected. The fuel tanks were mostly empty from the transport damage. What happened instead was worse. A slow-motion structural collapse as all 4 engine pods, the organs that let this bird hit Mach 2, turned into expensive scrap metal. The internal hydraulic lines that controlled everything from flaps to landing gear got severed by superheated copper, bleeding red fluid across those pristine white wings like the bomber was hemorrhaging. By the time the last Panzer finally locked onto the final drone and blew it apart, Volkov was staring at a $270 million corpse listing 15 degrees to one side, engines gutted, hydraulics dead, throat ripped open. 17 years of perfect defense now is gone in 90 seconds because Ukraine had studied the doctrine better than the people who wrote it. Volkov's boots crunched through debris that used to be the most protected airbase in Russia. The 2160M was bleeding hydraulic fluid across white paint, listing like it had been gut shot, all 4 engines torn open from the inside. He didn't want to look east, but his feet kept moving anyway because some part of him needed to see the full bill. The stockpile was just gone. 60 missiles that were supposed to freeze Ukraine through winter melted into shapes that didn't have names anymore. $180 million of firepower cooked off because he'd been watching the sky while the real threat came in low. His radio was lighting up with Moscow, and Moscow was asking questions he couldn't answer. The FSB would land before sunrise. Someone's head had to roll for this, and Volkov had been in the military long enough to know whose. Somewhere above him, satellites were already photographing the wreckage. By morning, the whole world would see what cheap drones did to Russia's invincible fortress. 17 years of perfect defense erased. The math was simple and absolutely brutal. Here's what $180,000 bought Ukraine that night: the complete destruction of $608 million worth of Russian capability. Every dollar spent deleted over $3,000 of enemy assets, which is the kind of return on investment that makes military planners rethink everything they thought they knew about modern warfare. But the real damage wasn't the money. Those 60 missiles represented 150 planned strikes against Ukrainian infrastructure, power grids that would have gone dark, hospitals that would have lost heat, families that would have frozen through winter. All of it deleted in 60 seconds. And the strategic aftershocks kept coming. Within a day, Russia evacuated its entire strategic bomber fleet 2,000 miles north to the Arctic Circle, adding massive operational costs and cutting effectiveness by half. The S-400 system Moscow had sold worldwide as invincible just got humiliated by drones cheaper than gaming laptops, which meant every export customer was suddenly asking very uncomfortable questions. Ukraine didn't need to steal the white swan to win. They just had to prove that in the 21st century, a swan is just a very large, very slow target for a beaver with a grudge. So what do you think? Was this the smartest tactical pivot of the war? Or just Russia's most expensive bad day? If you'd been in Volkov's position, with the same systems and doctrine, could you have stopped it? Or was Engels too always going to fall the moment Ukraine decided to rewrite the rules? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which impressed you more? The Decoy play that burned $8 million or the Swarm AI that learned from its own deaths? And if you love watching how cheap tech is demolishing expensive doctrine, smash that like button and subscribe. We're breaking down how Ukraine's turning the entire Russian playbook into scrap metal, one operation at a time. See you in the next one.